For this episode, I thought we would do something fun and different. I've often been asked what my favorite episodes are. There is a benchmark to qualify to make it on the program, and that benchmark is pretty high, so every episode is delivering high value to you as the listener. But there are a few that instantly come to mind as favorites, and I'll be sharing those in just a moment, so don't go anywhere. This program is made possible by financial support from Smile Online Course and Books. Smile Online offers online courses for teens and young adults designed to help them master social and career skills. Subject matter includes customer service skills, job interviewing, electronic etiquette, and managing stress. For more information, visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.
Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge, a movement to awaken and inspire fathers everywhere to take great pride in their role and to challenge society to understand how important fathers are to the stability and culture of their family's environment. Now, here's your host, Jonathan Guerrero.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode called My Favorite Episodes. The episodes I will mention today are not ranked in any specific order for any specific reason. They are all equally my favorites. I will give you the episode title, the date it was released, and a summary of why it was my favorite. Then I'll play a snippet of my favorite part of that episode. So let's get started. First, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles released September 29, 2025. And for those of you who are looking for the full episode, you can find it on thefatherhoodchallenge.com or on any podcast app. If you're a Gen Xer like me, then you probably remember the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise. I picked this one because of what God did through the lead character designer, Howard Chang. God gave him a new identity and purpose by giving him the vision for new action figures for a new franchise for God's kingdom. Here's a clip from that episode.
I came home one day and my dad saw me on the staircase. He was visiting me at my house. And he looked at me. He was confused. Like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. He's like, you look too good. I'm like, what do you mean? And so I walked up to my bedroom. I looked in the mirror, and I looked like I was in heaven. I felt like just full of the Spirit. It's hard to explain. You know what I mean? Like my skin.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
My skin was good. I was smiling, and I just felt very comfortable. And so that's when I realized, dude, that this Holy Spirit is real, man. It does change you. It does take over, even the way you look and the way you talk, right? So during that time, I'm really going through a revival in my heart. I was talking to God every day, but you know how most people I talk to, at least, when they pray, they get they get words, they get verses, they get inspiration, they get hope, right? But I get these visions in my head. I mean, it's just crystal clear 4K UHD visions. And man, a lot of times I was getting these images of these robots. I couldn't even explain it, right? So around the same time, I was sitting at my computer. I was doing some marketing work for clients. And I looked at the Christmas tree and I was thinking, hey, the Christmas tree is actually a celebration of Jesus's birthday, right? So I looked at it and I go, what can I get my kids that is cool, something they'll like, but that's also grounded in faith, right? And I looked online, I saw VeggieTales toys. They're cool, but I could put some eyes on a tomato and a cucumber. I guarantee you, my son would hate me for life if I did that. And I looked at some David and Goliath toys, and I saw just these toys, characters wearing loincloths throwing a rock, right? So I saw that whatever these faith toys, which should be underneath the Christmas tree celebrating Jesus' birthday, they're so outdated. I mean, or didn't even exist, right? Kids don't want the Noah's Ark boat. They don't want the David and Goliath throwing a rock toy. They want Pokemon. They want Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man, right? So I just got to think, hey, I used to design Ninja Turtles when I was a kid, when I was younger. And I designed, a lot of the most iconic toys ever made. So I thought I put two and two together. Maybe these visions are for me to kind of come up with something. So I decided to take the Bible, which has like the most amazing stories. If you think about it, there are stories of heroes that have no superpowers, but they use faith to overcome adversity, right?
Yeah.
Overcoming killing a 9 foot giant when you're just a kid, skinny kid with a few rocks, overcoming like 300, your army of 300 beating 150,000, you know. So if you look at all these stories, these are just they go beyond Superman, Batman, and everything else. So, and how many characters are there in the Bible? I can just go on and on, right? And they all have different powers, different stories. So I just put two and two together. This could be like a Pokemon because there are so many characters, and mix it up with something I love to draw, which is robots, right? I grew up with Robotech. So mix Robotech and Pokemon together, and what do you get? We get my new project. It's called Ancients, right? And
I love that name, Ancients.
yeah, even the title, man. I mean, it's when I say kind of miraculous, it's very interesting. When you come out the name for a company, or even naming your own kid, it's a whole task, right? I mean, you got to think, okay, if I name my kid Rocky, he's got to live with it for the rest of his life, right? And how would his name?
True.
So that's a very tough process, right? To come out with the name of the characters. So they were originally my first thought was prophets with the Z. I had that for 10 years, right? During the trademarking process, we realized it was almost impossible to do it. And my wife Gloria, I told you I got remarried 6 months ago, right? She said she started praying for a new name, and she was watching a Tim Keller sermon, and he was talking about Hebrews chapter 11, talking about the hall of faith, right? You gotta just trust in your faith, and be confident in faith. And this is what the ancients were commended for. That's verse 2 of Hebrews 11. And that word ancients, it really stuck. And then the church we've been going to for many months, in the front, they had this poster up the whole time. It was always there for months on end. And then we went to film our Kickstarter video. And while we're filming, we looked up at the poster. We saw it was in front of us the whole time. We were going every day for like morning prayer, right? It said Hebrews chapter 11, verses 1 and 2. It's been there the whole time. That was confirmation that God wanted me to use. He gave us that name.
And this started with your wife,
Yeah.
the name?
Yeah. We were getting a lawyer to try to get Prophets trademarked, and our chances were very low. So we had to come out with a new name. So we were in a struggle and a mad dash to come out with a new name, right? We had to come out with a new logo, the name, and a meaningful name too.
What I'm seeing in this is that your wife was looped in by God in orchestrating your purpose.
Yeah, if you look at the timeline of how ancients came to be, remember when I talked to you about when I explained how I got visions in my head of robots and everything? That was 12 years ago, right? So after it came to me, I started drawing it up, and as a creative person, when Playmates Toys asked me to design a particular Ninja Turtle, I can design it in one day, right? I have no problems finishing it. But with this, my own creation, it takes me 10 years, right? Because I need it to be perfect, and I can never get it to be perfect. And I met Gloria, my wife, 2.5 years ago. All right. So it was 10 years after that time of inception. And when I met her, she loved the idea. And I told her what the bottleneck was, is because I can't get the eyes right. I can't get the arms right. So I'm never going to launch it because it's not perfect. And she mentioned to me that it doesn't have to be perfect. You just got to do it, right? And that it just was that moment I realized, you're right. What am I doing sitting here And so it took a year and a half after that, and we got remarried. Together, we got married in February of this year. And we decided to go 100% into this, got whatever we had together, and worked our butts off to get all the drawings finished, got them sculpted, printed, and painted, and got to Comic-Con by July, end of July. And that was a crazy miracle in its own way as well. But yeah, I mean, this was something that I feel like the reason why I waited 10 years, God needed the right person to be my partner. And it was the timing was perfect. I feel like the world needs this more than ever with the whole division of what's going on in America and the world.
The next one is called From Child Sex Slavery to Freedom, with guest Troy Brewer, who's the pastor and founder of Troy Brewer Ministries. This episode aired February 3, 2025. This was a powerful episode for me because of the testimony that he shared about how the Holy Spirit personally guided him through a rescue of a little girl who was a sex slave in India. Here's a clip from that story.
I would say one of my favorite rescue stories is one of the first times I rescued somebody in India. I had a driver and his name was Prakash. And Prakash's job was to get me at 5 different churches starting in the morning, and they just work you like a government mule when you go over there to India. They line you up with 2,000 gigs, and I literally would have to get an IV. I would be so dehydrated. It was so hot. And I've learned since then, no, I'm not doing that anymore. But back in the day when I was still young, Prakash was taking me to 5 different churches. We were on our 3rd or our 4th church. I want to say actually our 2nd or our 3rd or our 3rd church. We're headed towards our 3rd church is what it was. And he just nonchalantly, as we passed this building, he said, "That is a house of ill repute," which those are not terms that I would use. I was like, and his accent was so harsh. It's like, "This is a house of ill repute." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, repeat that. I was like, "Are you telling me that that's a cat house?" And he said, "They are not having cats there." And I was like, I know what I said. I've been growing up a long time, Prakash. I know what goes on in there. And instantly, I call it, I'm just going to weird out. So just you put up with me, okay, Jonathan? I had the Lord show me 3 things like flashcards. And it was little girl. There is a little girl. She is a little girl and she has been abducted and you're going to walk out with her. And I just told him, I just instantly thought that, boom, boom, boom. And it was like 3 things in a row. And I went, "Turn around, I want to go in there." And he said, No. I said, "Turn around, I want to go in there." And so he turned around and he was thoroughly disgusted with me, thinking, "Oh yeah, the great American pastor, he's got to stop by a cat house, in between churches, And I told him, keep the car running. And so he just put it in park and I went in there. Well, they had a bar. The first part of it was a nice room. There were some couches in there. There was some young girls in there, meaning late teenage girls, early 20s. And they were in there. And I walked in there and I'm just going to tell you and tell your audience, I went straight up to the bar and started talking to everybody in there. Like, "Hey, what's going on? I'm from Texas. Where y'all from? Hey," and I got that kind of a personality, and I'm just trying to see, is it possible? Is there actually a child that I can rescue here? Because I felt like that God had shown that to me. And so I asked them, "Hey, do you have any little girls?" And they said, "Well, how little?" And I said, "Do you have any little ones?" And they said, "Yeah, well, we actually have 2 girls and a boy, and the one of them is sick. And so you can't see her. And the other 2 are in school. Now, school only goes to the 7th grade. So these are 6th graders or below. And I'm like, "Well, what about this sick one? What about that one?" And they're like, "Well, she's not prepared and she hasn't been here very long and she hasn't learned the proper protocols." And I'm like, "Oh, you got a difficult one. I want to see this difficult one." And I'm just talking to them. And they went, "Okay." So they're gone about 15 minutes. They come back. They walked me down this hall. And Jonathan, I'm telling you right now, I was horrified. When I left that room, they took me down a hall and then I went down another hall and this other hall was dark. And I am passing doors that have padlocks on the outside of the doors. And I'm thinking, okay, there is 3 guys with me now. And one of them, I'm thinking, I can take this guy. I can break his jaw. That's what I'm thinking. The next guy, I'm like, I don't know. And the third guy, I'm like, I'm running from that dude. I'm going to have, these guys are going to kill me. And I'm like, I'm just a pastor. I don't even know what the heck I'm doing. This is 20 something years ago. And I'm like, this is craziness. We get all the way down the hall, the very last door, all the way down the hall, which was considerably, was a long ways to me. It was. The door was open. There was one light hanging down from the ceiling, and it was a blue light. And the reason why it was blue was because this little girl was so beat up, and this little girl was so sick, and she was so starving, and they didn't want me to see how bad she looked. And she was wearing a white dress, and she was sitting on the edge of this little bitty tiny cot bed with her hands like this, and she was just sitting here, just in her hands, like the way that you would hold them in prayer, perhaps. And I said, oh, so there she is. And I was like, so I started talking to him, and I was like, and they're like, okay, well, we'll leave you. And I was like, no, I'm taking her with me. Let's go. And they're like, no, you're not taking her anywhere. I'm like, yes, I am. I'm like, this place is filthy. I'm a guy with money. I have a nice hotel. I'm taking her with me. And they're like, well, that's not possible. I'm like, it is possible. Like, here it is. Like, how much? I just start forking out money. And by the grace of God, they just said, yeah, give me that wad of cash and you can take her. And like, when will you be back? We'll send somebody with you, of course. Will you be back in 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours? And I said, I'll be back in 4 hours. And they said, okay. Well, I walked out with her and I got to the car, but they didn't follow me immediately. They were like holding this. There was like this wild thing that happened where they were just kind of standing there, like looking at each other like a couple of drunken hillbillies over this wad of cash. And they're looking like kind of like laughing, like, oh my gosh. And dude, I just walked out with her and I went out, got in the car. Prakash would not allow me to get in the car when he saw that I had this girl with me. He's like, no. I'm like, yes. He finally opened up the door. I said, let's go. My heart was about to literally jump out of my throat. We drove off and the guy didn't follow us. And I had Prakash translate for me. And I said, is that your family that's in there? And she said, no. And I said, what are you doing in there? And she said, I came to clean. They came to my village and they said I was going to clean. She said, but I haven't cleaned anything. And I said, how long have you been in there? And she said, she didn't know. And I said, has it been a day? Has it been a month? She just kind of shrugged her shoulders. And I'm like, tell me how long you've been here. And she said, she didn't know. She didn't have any idea. We're talking like a 10-year-old child, And I said, well, you're going to remember this day for the rest of your life. She's not saying anything. Prakash is translating. I said, do you know who Jesus is? And she said, no. I said, well, he knows you. And he sent me from the other side of the world to come over here and to get you. He's been watching you for a long time. And he sent me over here to get you. And I just got you. And I'm going to take you to a home where nobody is ever going to hurt you again, ever. And I know that you're sick and there's going to be a doctor there and we're going to eat. Nobody's going to hurt you. And she didn't like, ooh, yay. I mean, she didn't know what to think about any of it. She didn't have a clue. I mean, she just like, whatever. Prakash took me to a home that we have. It's a transition home when kids get out of high school and when they get into college. We have a home in Vishakhapatnam or outside of Vishakhapatnam, India, that has these college-age girls in it. And I want to tell you, Jonathan, those girls love me. I've known them since they were a little bitty. And when we pulled up there, I went in there and they were so excited I was there. And I told them, hey, you're not going to believe what I just did, which was crazy. And I said, and that little girl's in a car and she is terrified. She's been traumatized and we got to help her. And I said, I want her to have her own bed. And they're like, okay. And I was like, I want you to treat her like a queen. I went outside to the car, went and got her, brought her into the house, and all those girls, these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful 20, 21-year-old girls, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old girls in these beautiful saris, and they all started clapping for her. They were all clapping for her. And that was the first time that I saw any life in that little girl. And they were all hugging her and they were all talking to her and saying, no, you listen, we know Papa Troy and you're going to live here with us and it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You're not going back. And she was asking, I'm not going back there. And they're like, no, you're not going back. You're going to stay here with us. And so I left and we had a doctor come, all those kinds of things. I came back about 5 days later or 7 days later, something like that, because I traveled the whole country. On the way back, as I was flying out, we stopped at there and I went, I got to check on that little girl. And she came out and she hugged me and would not let go of me. And she asked me in Telugu and all the other girls started laughing. And I said, what did she say? And she said, she wants to know if you're Jesus. That's probably my favorite.
She saw Jesus in you.
Yeah, she's a cool girl too. She's married and grown up now and she's cool. I haven't seen her in probably 10 years. But that, man, I got on a plane and I was just sitting on the plane, man, the whole way, just going, what have you done, God, to put me in this position? Number one, I was happy I didn't get killed because I was way out of my league. I'm not like I get all this credit for rescuing all these kids. I don't actually rescue the kids. I rescue the rescuers that rescue the kids. That's what I do. But in this case, I actually rescued this kid.
Next, we have The Joys of a Girl Dad. My guest in this episode that released July 20, 2023 was Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield. I chose this episode because while I don't have daughters, I do have nieces that I connect with. I tried some of the clips that Dr. Canfield mentioned and saw instant results in the dynamics of the relationship. And there was a noticeable connection happening in the relationship that didn't happen before. Here's a soundbite from that episode.
Here's what I want dads listening to know is the research confirms over and over that every area of a daughter's life is better when she feels connected to her dad. And because we know that in the Bible, God talks about the hearts of fathers turning to their daughters, to their children, really. But I specifically am saying daughters. It's about a heart turn, not just a head turn. And we as daughters love it when our dads engage our minds and help us, fill out a FAFSA for college or get a bank account going or figure out how to work on our cars. But at the end of the day, it's God himself that said, if a dad turns his heart to his children, he will stop a curse from coming to them and to this land. So we know that this idea of a heart turn originated, right, in the heart of God as a father. And so the research is not surprising that it backs up what God himself says, which is that when a dad has turned his heart to his daughter, she will feel more connected to him. Your daughter is more likely to finish high school and attend college. She will get better grades. This is from a feeling of connection, a heart connection to her dad. She will have less body dissatisfaction and healthier weight. She will have greater self-esteem. She will have less depression. She's more likely to hold steady employment. I mean, who would have ever thought that had something to do with her relationship with her dad, right? Like, hey, if you've got a daughter who's wired to be a hard worker, she'll succeed. No, the research shows it's about a connection to her dad. She will also have more pro-social empathy. I mean, do we need that in our world now more than ever? That's again because of a dad-daughter, dad-son even connection. And here's one that dads always love is hearing that she will have less suicide attempts because of her connection to her dad, and she will delay her sexual debut. Do I hear an amen?
Wow.
So dad, that is an antidote to your daughter being drawn toward the dudes and the duds. If she has dad there and there's a heart connection, a feeling of connection, all of those things are confirmed in the research as lining up with the heart of God, that your daughter will be healthier, stronger, and able to hold her own as a leader in her peer group, all because of you. But another thing is look in your daughter's eyes. Learn to read her eyes, because if you're responding in anger, you're going to see fear in those precious little eyes that you looked on the day she was born and thought, I will never hurt her. So dad, look in her eyes, and that will help you also reduce or titrate your anger. I really believe that. I want you to go get a dry erase marker or a pack of sticky notes that you most likely already have at your house. And I want you to either write directly on your daughter's mirror or on the rearview mirror, like in her bedroom, her bathroom, the rearview mirror of her car. And if you don't live with your daughter, if there's divorce or you travel, that's okay. You can do this on the mirror where you are, take a screenshot and send it to her, which I got that idea from another dad, which was awesome. But Dad, the mirror is so often, back to the father of lies, it's a reflection back of all of our flaws, right? We see everything wrong with ourselves. And Dad, your voice matters, as we've been saying throughout this whole conversation. And so when you write an affirming message on your daughter's mirror, the exact mirror she's looking in, where the father of lies wants her to see everything wrong with her, and you're saying, I love being your dad.
Last, but certainly not least, Inside a Real Father-Daughter Bond, released March 21, 2024. This was a fun yet insightful conversation with a father-daughter podcast team. Renee Friedman Watts co-hosts a podcast with her dad, Wayne Friedman. This episode was on how Wayne was intentional about leaving a lasting legacy with his daughter and whole family, and how dads anywhere can do the same. The conversation between them in the episode became its own lasting legacy preserved for them both. Here's a soundbite.
I've tried very hard to have a bond with all three of my girls, and you know, you have to find what interests them, and you have to be part of their show. In the beginning, you would think that a father, whether he has sons or daughters, wants your children to be part of your show or my show. But it turns out that trying to force or trying to put your values onto theirs, they have to accept it on their own. It's got to be their choice. And if it isn't their choice, it's really not going to work, because eventually, when someone is telling you what to do or telling you how to feel or instructing you of what you can do and what you can't do, eventually a person is going to revolt and say, you know, I've had enough of that spaghetti and meatballs. I want to try something else. And I think a parent has to try to set some guidelines, but you have to be able to give your children an opportunity to stand on their own 2 feet and be able to blossom and be their own person. And the best way to do that is to have communication that's not just one-sided.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you learned as much from these episodes as I did. My challenge for you is to connect with other dads who want to become an awesome dad just like you, and who want to leave a lasting legacy for good. You were never meant to do this alone. There are many different communities mentioned in various episodes, so you can find the right one for you. If you go to patreon.com/thefatherhood-challenge, that's patreon.com/thefatherhood-challenge, you can find a community there where there are others all trying to grow deep as men and as fathers. I'd love to meet you and connect with you there. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatherhood Challenge. If you would like to contact us, listen to other episodes, find any resource mentioned in this program, or find out more information about the Fatherhood Challenge, please visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.